She says, "I need space." You wait. Your heart speeds. You think, "What now?" This video will teach you how to turn that moment into your advantage. Fast, clear, real. Why do I say advantage? Because most men treat words like logic tests. They answer with facts, with proof, with long, nervous messages. But feelings are not solved with facts. They are felt. So if you only explain, you get ignored. If you only explain, you lose. Ask yourself, why does answering every text make her less curious? Why does proving your love make her value it less? Why does being nice all the time make you invisible? Why do your best explanations leave her cold? Those are the problems, big ones, real ones. And you've seen them, you felt them, you want the fix, not some trick, not a script to fake things. You want real change. So listen, quick story, short. John was helpful, always. He did everything, bought gifts, texted first, explained why he felt sad. He used logic. He thought that would make her love him. It didn't. She pulled away. He was confused. He asked friends. They said, "Give more, prove more." He did. It got worse. Then he changed one thing. He stopped over-explaining. He stopped flooding his time. He lived his day. He showed, not told. He kept calm. He had hobbies. He had friends. He had purpose. She started to ask about him. She missed him. She looked forward to seeing him. Not because he played games, because he lived a life she could join. That's the point. Be felt, not just understood. Move from logic to story, from proof to presence. Here's what that actually means. Simple language. Keep this with you like a rule. Live first. Have your own life. Work, gym, friends, a hobby that matters. When your time is worth something, your time becomes worth guarding. That makes your presence rare. That makes it desirable. Show more than tell. If you say, "I care," but your calendar is empty, your words are cheap. If you show up with calm, if you keep your word, if you act with consistency, that builds feeling. It writes a story she can feel. Control your storms. When she gets distant, don't blow up. Don't flood her phone. Breathe, walk away, do something that matters to you. That quiet creates space for longing, not because you're playing a trick, because you're choosing peace over panic. Translate logic into story. Example, instead of saying, "I'm here for you because X," you do one small steady thing. Cook once, listen without fixing, keep your voice calm, let your actions tell the story. "I'm solid." That feeling lands deeper than an essay of proof. Make scarcity honest. Scarcity means your life has weight. Not that you ignore people cruelly, but that you don't make yourself endlessly available. You have priorities. She sees you value time. She values you back. Be competent. Real confidence is simple. Fix your problems. Learn skills. Keep promises to yourself. When you approve of you, you don't need constant praise. That quiet strength is magnetic. This video is not teaching tricks. It teaches a shift from chasing to living, from explaining to storytelling, from panic to calm, from needy to attractive. By the end, you will have clear moves, tiny, repeatable things you can do today, not to manipulate, to live better, to be felt more, to feel less anxious. Let me ask you something that might sting. Why is it that the harder you try to explain yourself, the less she listens? Why is it that when you pour your heart out, she seems more distant? Why does giving all your time, all your energy, all your attention end with silence instead of closeness? Strange, isn't it? You think effort equals love. You think showing her how much she means will guarantee safety. But every time you try harder, something breaks. Here's the truth nobody told you. Women don't fall for logic. They fall for energy. They fall for presence. They fall for what they feel around you, not what they read in your words. And when you try to explain, you kill the mystery. You drown the spark. You turn yourself into a book that's already finished. And who wants to reread a story they already know by heart? Now pause, think. Why is it that silence can make her curious, but constant reassurance makes her numb? Why does a man who says little but lives with purpose hold more power than a man who explains every thought? Why does space build attraction while constant contact suffocates it? These are not small questions. These are the questions that decide whether she leans closer or slips further away. Let me give you an image. Picture a fire. If you stand too close, throwing logs every second, you smother it. The flames choke. But if you step back, feed it at the right time, let the air flow, the fire grows, it rises, it lives. Relationships work the same. But here's the trap. Men today are told the opposite. Society whispers, show her everything, open up fully, make her your whole life, keep her reassured, never let her wonder. And what happens when you follow that script? You lose respect, you lose attraction, you lose yourself. So the real problem isn't that you're not enough, it's that you've been trained wrong. You've been told to give everything when she doesn't even want everything. She wants a man who knows when to step back. She wants to feel your life is full, not empty. She wants to feel your presence is chosen, not forced. Think about it. Why do men who keep busy lives seem more attractive than men who clear their schedules instantly? Why do men who can walk away calmly have more pull than men who beg for another chance? Why does distance, when handled with strength, create desire instead of fear? It's not about games. It's not about being cold. It's about showing through your actions that your world doesn't collapse without her, that you have structure, that you have mission, that your time matters, and when your time matters to you, it begins to matter to her. This is the heart of the shift. When she feels you don't need her for your happiness, she starts to want to be part of it. When she senses your life is moving with or without her, she leans in, she tries harder, she values more. And if you're asking yourself, but won't space push her away, listen carefully. It's not the space that pushes her away, it's your fear of space. Because if you panic, if you chase, if you beg, she feels smothered. But if you stay calm, if you let the silence breathe, that's when she notices the gap. That's when she starts to wonder. That's when attraction grows again. So the problem is clear. Men have been sold a broken formula. Give more, chase more, explain more, and it leaves you drained, rejected, and confused. But here's the good news. There's a solution, and it's simpler than you think. Instead of being the man who forces closeness, you become the man who inspires it. Instead of being the man who explains, you become the man who is felt. And in the next pages, you'll see exactly how. Have you ever noticed how the men who seem the calmest, the ones who don't rush, don't beg, don't stress, somehow end up being the most desired? Strange, right? The guy who's not always available, not always texting, not always bending, he's the one women lean toward. But the man who's desperate to prove he's the perfect boyfriend, he gets ignored. Why does it work this way? Why is it that showing too much eagerness makes her lose interest? Why is it that the man who seems too nice, too ready, too open, ends up overlooked? Why is it that the man who holds his ground, who doesn't change his whole life just to please, ends up pulling her closer? The problem runs deeper than you think. Most men confuse love with losing themselves. They believe love means sacrifice of all their time, all their hobbies, all their energy, just to keep her comfortable. But here's the twist. When you give up everything for her, you're not showing strength, you're showing emptiness, you're showing you have no spine, no frame, no self, and deep down she feels it. Think about it. Would you respect a king who abandons his throne just to sit at someone else's table? Would you admire a leader who drops his mission the second someone frowns at him? That's exactly what most men do in relationships. They dethrone themselves. And the price? Loss of respect. Let me ask you, how many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no? How many times have you ignored your own needs just so she wouldn't be upset? How many times have you allowed her emotions to control your life instead of staying rooted in your own direction? Every time you do this, you kill attraction, not because you're unkind, but because you stop being a man she can feel safe with. Here's the truth. Women test men, not out of cruelty, not out of games, but to feel, can this man stand strong, even when I'm emotional? Can this man handle pressure? Can this man keep his world intact, even if I'm upset? When you collapse under that weight, when you trade your strength for approval, you fail the test. Now here's the deeper layer. Men today are told the exact opposite of what works. They're told, always be there instantly, always show her she comes first, never let her feel uncomfortable. But by following this, you destroy the one thing she truly needs, your stability. Because how can she trust you to lead, to protect, to provide strength, if your entire emotional world crumbles whenever she pulls back? How can she respect you if every decision you make depends on her mood? How can she feel safe if you are not safe within yourself? The problem isn't that you're not enough. The problem is that you gave up being your own man. So let me ask again, what bomber bait not with krond? What happens when you start saying no with calm confidence? What happens when you stop chasing her approval and start living from your own values? What happens when you choose your mission, your growth, your path, before her moods? I'll tell you what happens. She leans back in, not because you demanded it, not because you forced it, but because she feels something rare, a man who doesn't lose himself for anyone, a man who leads, not pleads. And here's the paradox. When you finally stop bending to her every demand, she actually trusts you more. When you hold your ground, she feels more secure. When you stop making her the center of your life, she wants to be closer to yours. This is the core problem men don't see. Attraction dies, not because you didn't give enough, but because you gave too much of yourself away. And once you understand that everything changes, here's a question that stings. Why do men who give women everything often end up with nothing? Sounds unfair, doesn't it? You give time, you give effort, you give loyalty, you even sacrifice your own needs to make her happy, and yet she feels distant, cold, restless. Why does it happen? Why do women drift away from the man who never leaves their side? Why do they grow bored of the man who is always available? Why do they crave the one thing that most men are terrified to give space? See, here's the paradox. The more a man tries to lock her down, the more she looks for an escape. Not because she hates love, not because she wants chaos, but because her nature isn't built to respect a man who abandons himself to keep her. She might say she wants you 24/7. She might demand it, but the moment you deliver that, the attraction dies quietly in the background. Think about this. A flame only stays alive because of oxygen. Smother it with too much air, it dies. Cut off air completely, it dies. But give it just the right space, it grows, it dances, it lights the room. That's how connection works. Too much closeness and no breathing room, and it suffocates. Here's the real problem. Men confuse closeness with bonding. They think the more I give, the more I'm around, the more she'll feel safe. But real safety doesn't come from constant presence. Real safety comes from her sensing, this man doesn't need me to survive. He has his own life, his own structure, his own rhythm. He's here by choice, not by desperation. Now let me ask you, how many men do you know who become invisible outside their relationships? They stop seeing friends. They drop their passions, they stop building, their entire world becomes her, and then they wonder why she doesn't look at them the same way. What's left for her to feel drawn to? Where's the mystery? Where's the challenge? Where's the sense that she's being invited into something bigger than just Netflix nights and constant texting? The problem is not love. Love is fine, the problem is imbalance. A man who makes a woman his sole focus turns her into his oxygen tank. And the moment she feels that weight, she starts craving distance. And here's the brutal part. When she says, "I need space," most men panic. They beg, they plead, they try harder, they send paragraphs, they call non-stop. But the more they do, the more she slips further away. Not because she's evil, but because his panic reveals a deeper truth. His life is empty without her, and no woman wants to carry the burden of being a man's entire reason for being. You see the trap? The harder you grip, the faster it breaks apart. The more you give yourself up, the more she loses respect. The more you prove yourself, the more she feels you're not worth following. So here's the big question you should ask yourself. Are you creating attraction, or are you smothering it? Are you a man she's drawn toward, or a man she's trying to escape? Because here's the secret most never hear. Real desire comes not from clinging, but from spacing. Not from proving, but from being. Not from showing her she's your whole world, but from showing her you already have one. That's the problem most men never solve. They give all of themselves, thinking that's what love requires. But in the end, what they gave away was the very thing she wanted most. His strength, his independence, his unshakable self. And once that's gone, she's gone too. Let me ask you something that nobody ever told you out loud. Why do women chase the man who doesn't chase them? Why do they dream about the man who's not always around, instead of the one who's always available? Why does the guy who seems scarce, selective, almost untouchable, suddenly become the one she can't stop thinking about? Strange, right? Because we're told the opposite. We're told, show her you care, give her your time, prove your love. But if that's true, then why does the guy who gives her unlimited attention always get treated like he's invisible? Here's the problem most men don't want to face. Abundance kills value. Scarcity creates it. Think about it. If gold was lying on every street corner, would anyone treasure it? Would people line up to buy it? No, they'd step over it, treat it like dirt. But because it's rare, people will dig for it, fight for it, even kill for it. So here's the hard truth. Your attention is gold. But most men throw it away like loose change. Always texting, always calling, always available, always waiting. And when you're always available, you stop being valuable. Now pause and ask yourself, why should she feel excitement if you're always there? Where's the suspense? Where's the anticipation? Where's the desire? See, attraction is tied to imagination. When she doesn't know where you are, when she doesn't know what you're doing, her mind works overtime. She pictures you in motion, living, creating, being wanted by the world, and that image draws her closer. But when she knows every detail, when you're updating her every second, you remove the mystery, and when the mystery is gone, so is the spark. Here's the crazy part. This doesn't just apply to women, it applies to everything in life. The more you flood the market, the less people care. The more you disappear strategically, the more people lean in to look for you. But here's where most men destroy themselves. They confuse scarcity with playing games. They think, if I ignore her, she'll want me. That's not it. That's cheap. That's manipulation. Scarcity only works if your life is full, if your time is naturally limited because you're actually doing something worth doing. Ask yourself this: if you vanished for a week, what would you be doing? Sitting at home, scrolling on your phone, waiting for her to call? Or would you be building something, training your body, expanding your mind, creating a life that shines without her applause? That's the real test. Scarcity without purpose is just laziness. Scarcity with purpose is power. And here's another problem. Men fear absence because they think she'll forget them. But the truth? She forgets you faster when you're always in her face. Why? Because the brain adapts. When something's always present, it blends into the background. It becomes noise, and no woman feels desire for background noise. But when you're not there, when she has to notice the silence, when she has to wonder, that's when you stand out. That's when she feels the absence. That's when she asks herself, where is he? What's he doing? Why do I suddenly miss him? Scarcity builds value. Value builds desire. And desire builds respect. So the question you have to answer is this: are you living as a man of abundance? Always available, always giving, always chasing? Or are you living as a man of value, selective, scarce, but deeply rooted in his own purpose? Because if you're always the first man to answer, always the first to show up, always the one who drops his world for hers, you'll never be the man she truly fights to keep. Scarcity isn't about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to get. Because your life is already so full, so rich, so magnetic, that she feels lucky just to be invited into it. That's the difference. That's the missing piece, and that's the problem most men never solve. Let me hit you with a question that might sting. Why do most men lose a woman's respect? Not because of what they say, but because of how they react. Why is it that a man can look strong, confident, unshakable at first, but the moment tension rises, the mask slips, and she sees weakness she can never unsee? Think about it. How many times have you seen a man crumble when a woman tests him? She cancels last minute, and he blows up. She gets distant, and he panics. She flirts with another guy just to push his buttons, and he loses control. One emotional crack, and suddenly he's exposed. Here's the hidden problem. Most men are slaves to their emotions. They think they're in control, but really, their reactions betray them. Their mood is dictated by her attention. Their energy rises when she praises them and collapses when she withdraws. It's not strength, it's dependency disguised as care. Now ask yourself, what does that communicate to her? If every word, every look, every shift in her tone can control your state, then what does that say about your inner power? What does that say about your self-mastery? See, women don't just look at your muscles, your money, your words. They study your emotional center. They test it, they poke it, they press it, because deep down, they want to know, is this man solid, or will he break when the world presses him? And here's where most men fail. They confuse emotional control with suppression. They think stoic means showing nothing. But that's not it. Suppression is weakness pretending to be strength. True mastery isn't about being cold, it's about being calm. It's about owning your fire, not hiding it. Let's build a loop of questions here. What happens when you get triggered by every little move she makes? What happens when your peace depends on her reply, her attention, her mood? When you need her validation to feel steady? What happens when every time she challenges you, she sees you fold? The answer is simple. She stops respecting you. And once respect is gone, attraction is not far behind. Let's be brutally honest. Life will test you. Women will test you. Circumstances will test you. But the man who can stand in the storm without losing his center, that's the man people follow, admire, and desire. But here's the catch. Emotional mastery doesn't show in the easy moments. Anyone can be calm when things go their way. It shows in the heat, in the friction, in the unexpected. That's when your true level is revealed. Imagine this. She gives you the silent treatment. Most men panic, over-text, chase. A man of mastery? He notices, but doesn't react. He holds his ground. He lets the silence breathe. He doesn't beg for her energy, because his energy is already full. Or picture this. She throws an emotional storm at you, words sharp, tone harsh. The average man fights back, shouts louder, matches chaos with chaos. But the man of mastery, he doesn't mirror her storm. He becomes the anchor, the calm in the chaos. And that calm, ironically, pulls her back into his frame. Here's the deeper value. Women don't want a man who controls them. They want a man who controls himself. Because if you can't master yourself, you can't lead anything. Not a relationship, not a family, not even your own path. So let me ask you this again. Are you the man who bends at every emotional push, or are you the man who remains unshaken no matter the test? Because here's the truth, your emotional stability is your invisible crown. It tells her without words, I am grounded, I am whole, I am not moved by storms, I move through them. That is what separates the boy from the man, the weak from the strong, the replaceable from the unforgettable. What are the not pleasable? What is you senti guides down your forgettable? What is you senti guides down my bolt? I am grounded, I am whole, I am not moved by storms, I move through them. That is what separates the boy from the man, the weak from the strong, the replaceable from the unforgettable. What is you siden, replaceable pro the minchid, booster and don'tits. Let me hit you with a truth most men never hear. A man without direction is a man without gravity. He floats, he drifts, he becomes easy to sway, easy to manipulate, easy to lose, and here's the part that stings. Women can feel it. They might not say it out loud, but they sense when a man has no mission, when he's just existing instead of driving. Now think about this. How many men today place women at the very center of their lives? Every text, every call, every decision filtered through her. He waits for her approval before he moves. He pauses his goals to chase her. He reshapes his time, his friends, his priorities around her. At first it looks sweet, but soon it becomes suffocating. Here's the loop of questions you must ask yourself. What happens when your life has no larger mission than pleasing her? What happens when she realizes she is the only fuel for your motivation? What happens when your identity crumbles the moment she pulls away? And most importantly, what happens when she wakes up one morning and sees that you are a man defined only by her presence? The answer is brutal. She loses attraction. Not because she doesn't want love, not because she doesn't value care, but because she doesn't want to carry the full weight of being your only purpose. That burden turns desire into pressure, and pressure kills attraction. Now, here's the real problem. Society teaches men the exact opposite. Movies, songs, advice, they all repeat the same weak message. Show her she's your everything. Prove your love by sacrificing all else. Make her the center of your universe. But let's stop and think logically. Why would someone admire or desire a man whose entire existence bends around them? Where's the strength in that? Where's the power? The truth is this: women want to join a man's story, not become his whole story. They want to step into a world already in motion, a journey that existed before them and will continue beyond them. They don't want to replace your mission. They want to walk beside it, add to it, and be part of something bigger than themselves. Let me paint a picture. Imagine me. Man A wakes up, no goals, no discipline, no fire. His main motivation? Hoping she texts back. His energy flows where hers directs it. At first, maybe she enjoys the attention, but soon she feels the void. He is easy to predict, easy to read, and easy to replace. Man B wakes up with purpose. He trains his body, he sharpens his mind, he builds his craft. His day has structure, meaning, progress. He values her, but she is not his only source of energy. She is an addition to a life already full. His mission existed before her, and it continues with or without her. And because of this, she feels pulled, not chased, drawn, not begged. Which man holds the aura? Which man is remembered? Which man creates desire that deepens instead of fading? The answer is obvious. See absence. The strategic space we spoke about earlier doesn't just come from ignoring her. It comes naturally when your mission requires time, focus, and discipline. You don't disappear to play games. You disappear because you're building, because your path demands it, because you are not living on borrowed energy. You are producing your own. And here's the paradox. When you stop making her the mission, attraction grows. When you become scarce because your time has value, respect rises. When your life is directed towards something greater, She feels both safe and inspired around you. So let me ask you again, what are you waking up for? Is your life a blank canvas, waiting for her to color it? Or are you the artist, already painting, already building, already shaping, and she sees the beauty of joining a man with vision? Because here's the reality. Purpose is the ultimate gravity. It pulls people toward you, it commands respect, it breeds stability, and it makes your presence rare, not because you hide, but because you are in motion. That is the difference between a man she forgets and a man she can't let go of. Let me start with a thought that might bother you for a second. Do you realize that the more someone sees you, the less they actually value you? Sounds unfair, right? You give your time, you show your care, you make yourself constantly available, and instead of being rewarded, you get overlooked, ignored, sometimes even taken for granted. But why does this happen? Think about it. Why do people pay more for diamonds than for stones on the street? Why do limited edition sneakers sell out while regular shoes sit on the shelf? Why does a concert ticket feel more exciting when it's hard to get? The answer is simple: scarcity. When something is rare, its value rises. When something is everywhere, it loses its shine. Now ask yourself these hard questions. What happens when you're always free to reply, always ready to meet, always sitting by the phone? What happens when your time is treated as if it costs nothing? What happens when she realizes you're always available, no matter what she does or how she treats you? And most importantly, what happens to desire when predictability replaces mystery? The truth? Attraction dies in comfort. It fades when there's no sense of rarity, no sense of distance, no sense of earned access. This doesn't mean you should play games or act cold. It means you must recognize that your time is the most valuable currency you own, and if you spend it carelessly, people stop respecting it. Let's be honest. Most men today believe the opposite. They think, if I just show up more, she'll feel secure. If I just give more, she'll see how loyal I am. If I'm always there, she'll love me forever. But reality is harsher. The more common your presence, the less weight it carries. The more abundant your energy, the less she treasures it. Scarcity doesn't mean absence for the sake of ego. It means your life is full enough that your time must be chosen wisely. It means not everyone has constant access to you because you are invested in your work, your growth, your mission. It means your yes matters because you're not afraid to say no. Picture two men again. Man A answers instantly. He's free anytime. He cancels his schedule just to be available. At first she might enjoy the attention, but soon it becomes expected. His presence is no longer a gift. It's background noise. Man B has a life in motion. He respects her, values her, but his time has structure. He responds when he can, not because he's playing hard to get, but because he's genuinely busy building something. His yes feels like a reward. His presence feels earned. And because of that, she values it more. This is the law of scarcity. When you respect your own time, others do too. When you value your presence, others feel privileged to have it. When you live a life that keeps you in demand, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, she doesn't just want your attention, she craves it. Now let me ask you, are you living in a way that makes your presence precious? Or have you cheapened yourself by being endlessly available? Are you the man she has to reach for, or the man she knows will always be waiting at the same spot, like a chair in a corner, unmoving? Scarcity is not about starving her of attention. It's about making your attention meaningful. It's not about withholding love. It's about ensuring your love has depth, because it is not scattered everywhere. And here's the paradox. The less you give away your time without thought, the more others chase it. The less predictable you are, the more she wants to figure you out. The less common your presence, the more unforgettable you become. Because in a world drowning in abundance, the rare is what captures the heart. Let me hit you with this. Have you ever noticed how the strongest men in the room are usually the quietest? Not because they're weak, not because they're shy, but because they don't need to prove anything. They hold a kind of calm power that people can feel without a single word. Isn't that strange? Why does silence sometimes speak louder than noise? But here's the problem. Most men do the exact opposite. When they feel fear, they show it. When they feel anger, they explode. When they feel anxious, they chase harder. They think that releasing their emotions without control makes them real or authentic. But ask yourself, is that true strength, or is it just lack of discipline? Think for a moment. Why is it that when you react too quickly, she suddenly loses respect? Why is it that when you panic, she pulls away even more? Why is it that when you show you can't hold your own emotions, she doesn't feel safe around you? Why does being too raw often destroy attraction instead of building it? Here's the answer. Emotions are powerful, but uncontrolled emotions are dangerous for you, for your relationships, for your peace of mind. Imagine fire. It can warm your house or it can burn it down. The difference? Control. And here's the secret most men never learn. Emotional mastery isn't about shutting down your feelings, it's about leading them. It's about knowing when to breathe instead of shout. When to pause instead of panic. When to step back instead of drown in the storm. Now picture two different men again. Man A feels anxiety when she pulls away. So he texts her 20 times, he calls, he begs, he tries to fix it with words. He thinks showing his panic will prove his love, but all it proves is that he cannot carry his own weight, that he needs her to stabilize him, that he's not the rock she can lean on. Man B feels that same anxiety, but he does something different. He notices it, he breathes, he doesn't bury it, but he doesn't let it control him either. He stays calm, he stays composed, he goes on with his day, his work, his life, and when he does speak to her, his energy is steady. She feels grounded just by being around him. He didn't suppress his emotions, he led them, and that leadership, that calmness, that's what makes her feel safe, because safety is attraction. Calmness is power, emotional steadiness is rare, and what's rare, valuable. This is why men who can master themselves win. Not because they have fancy words, not because they put on an act, but because they live with an unshakable stability that others can feel. And here's what makes it even more powerful. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's quiet, it's steady, it's always there. Ask yourself, when she looks at you, does she see a man who collapses at the first wave of emotion? Or does she see a man who can walk through fire without letting it burn him alive? Do you show up like chaos, or do you show up like a lighthouse, calm, bright, guiding through the storm? Emotional mastery isn't just about relationships, it's about life. It's about business, it's about friendships, it's about every challenge you face. Because if you can't control yourself, you'll always be controlled by something outside of you. And when that happens, you lose your freedom. You lose your power, you lose your peace. The truth is simple. People follow the man who leads himself first. People trust the man who doesn't panic. People respect the man who stays calm when others lose their minds. And women, they are drawn almost instinctively to the man who can carry both his weight and hers when the storm hits. That's emotional mastery, not suppression, not pretending, but control. Leadership, quiet power, the kind of power that makes others breathe easier in your presence. Now the question is, are you going to keep letting your emotions run wild and cost you your respect, your peace, and your relationships? Or are you going to step into the kind of mastery that makes you unshakable? Let me ask you something powerful. Have you ever noticed how men spend years searching for the trick, the line or the formula to keep attraction alive, and yet the answer was never outside, but always inside? Strange, isn't it? We look for secrets in books, in gurus, in endless advice columns, but the truth was never about what you say to her. It was about what you say to yourself. And here's the truth I want you to hold on to as we close this journey. You don't need more tactics. You don't need to chase harder. You don't need to prove yourself. What you needed all along was already inside you. The solution has been sitting quietly, waiting for you to notice. Think about it. Attraction isn't built by chasing. It's built by living. Respect isn't built by demanding it. It's built by embodying it. Peace isn't found by trying to control her. It's found by controlling yourself. And freedom. Freedom comes the moment you realize you don't need her to validate you. You validate yourself. Most men never see it because they're too busy running in circles. They're told, give her more, show her more, do more, and in that race they lose the very thing that made them valuable to begin with. Their independence, their stability, their calm center. But you've just been handed the key that unlocks the cage most men stay trapped in for life. Let me put it blunt. A man who needs nothing becomes the man who has everything. Not because he's cold, not because he's heartless, but because he understands his worth isn't dependent on any one person's approval. He knows he brings value by existing as a man with purpose, with standards, with peace in his heart. Now ask yourself this. Doesn't it make sense that a woman feels more drawn to a man who doesn't orbit around her, but instead walks his own path? Isn't it obvious that scarcity, calmness, and true confidence make you stand out, not as a boy chasing love, but as a man who naturally attracts it? Isn't it clear by now that when you live a life full of meaning, absence doesn't weaken the bond, it strengthens it? That's the solution you've been searching for. It was never about playing games, it was never about tricks, it was about you living in such a way that your presence carries weight and your absence creates desire. This is where it all comes together. Detachment gives you freedom, freedom gives you power, power gives you peace, and peace, that rare, steady energy, is what makes you magnetic. That's the end game. That's what men spend their lives chasing, only to discover it was always built on mastering themselves first. So here's my final message for you. Stop looking outward for what was always inward. Stop searching for the secret in someone else's approval. The secret is already in your hands. You don't need to prove. You don't need to chase. You don't need to beg. You only need to live in alignment with your worth, your purpose, and your calm strength. Because when you do, you don't just get attraction, you don't just get respect, you don't just get peace. You become the man who no longer needs to ask, what should I do if she says she needs space? Because now you know, space isn't a problem for you anymore. It's your strength. And that is the solution you've been waiting for.